St. Pete Pride, it's a big deal this year. Major milestone, which is funny because like 2003 to me was like not that long ago.
Yesterday, right.
Just the fact that it's been going 20 years and you get to be a part of organizing it, it's been kind of crazy though, right? You said.
It's been wonderful, yeah.
Did you feel an extra sort of, I don't know, sense of just like, oh my God, we've got to, if any year we've got to do it and do it right and do it big, it's got to be this year?
I think if anything, it feels incredibly humbling to be sitting in the seat that I'm sitting in, because I think about everyone who has held this role before and all the thousands of volunteers and every participants who made St. Pete Pride what it is. So I think every year our team is going to feel like we have to nail it this year. I don't know that this year that we have to nail it more than other years, but we definitely feel this groundswell of excitement this year. I think that's because we're coming out of COVID and we haven't had a parade since 2019. I think it's because it is our 20th anniversary. I think it's because of the anti-LGBTQ backlash that we've faced legislatively recently and the threat that our community is under currently. So I think the combination of that adds a lot of excitement and for us as organizers, significance to getting it right. And that's, the outward facing events that people see but we also have to get a lot right internally. And with it being our 20th anniversary, it allowed us to sit back and reflect on everything that we have done right before and also the things that we haven't done right and what we get to change. And I think you see that reflected in our team, in our programming, and in our commitment to year-round programming going forward.
I'm trying to figure out how to ask this without sounding like so pessimistic. But when you look at how much things have changed in Florida, it's like, boy, a lot has stayed the same or gone backward in some ways. It's an interesting time to be LGBTQ in Florida.
It is an interesting time. People talk about like the pendulum, swinging, and we look at what's happening politically and we think we have this progress and then we go back the other way. And I think what's important is that we maybe step back and take rather than getting lost in the moment of a particular month or year, take a bigger look at the direction that our community is moving in and that society as a whole is moving in. It's easy to feel pessimistic. I definitely have days where I do feel that way. But I think that it also speaks to the significance of the work we have to do, right? And we can turn that pessimism into activism. And as long as we do that and don't get disheartened, then I think ultimately we will keep moving forward in the direction that we as a society, I think, collectively hope that we do move.
And that does get to the root of this too. I mean, it's more than just a parade. It's more than just all these fun events. I mean, it's a statement. It's always been sort of an event of defiance, right? And in particular, in St. Pete's case, it was born out of a time in Tampa Bay when Pride was sort of under assault.
Right. Yeah, I think that speaks to the personality both of our city and of St. Pete Pride as an organization. Tampa had the big Pride, and then I believe it was just by one vote, one county commissioner kind of eradicated that. They banned Pride in Tampa, and instead of our community slinking away or moving to a more progressive part of the country, they kind of put a stake in the ground here in St. Pete and said, all right, well, we'll do it, and we'll do it bigger, and we'll do it better. And we now have the largest Pride celebration in the state of Florida and one of the largest in the country. And again, I think that just speaks to the kind of vision and just exceptional spirit of our community in this place. I've heard St. Pete called the anti-Florida before, which is it's a funny name, but it feels fitting at times. Yeah.
I don't know that a lot of people are even aware too of sort of the history of that and what happened with Tampa Pride, because I think now people look, oh my gosh, it's great, we've got celebrations on both sides of the bay, other cities, but it really was an interesting sort of tumultuous time here. Not ancient history either.
No, not, I mean, yeah, this is our 20th anniversary, not long ago at all. I think that, I think we're just getting started, is what I think. I think that sometimes when something is founded from a place of necessity, it gives it a lot more, the people who understand why it exists feel more passionate about ensuring that it endures, because we understand what's at stake. We cannot be complacent. I don't think it's a coincidence that we already have over 400 volunteers signed up for this June. I don't think it's a coincidence that it is going to be our largest Pride celebration ever. Yes, it's our 20th anniversary. I think it's more than that. And so going back to your question about the pessimism, it's there, but again, that pendulum swings, right? Like when we see a threat, we rise. And I think that St. Pete Pride represents that for a lot of people here.
This is a new role that you're in now, but it's not your first involvement with St. Pete Pride, right? I mean,
Right.
You've been involved for years in some capacity or another.
I actually got involved in October of 2020 is when I first got involved as VP. The challenge there was figuring out how do we have a Pride celebration during COVID. And we had to get very creative about doing that, but we understood that that was necessary. A lot of Prides folded during COVID, and we knew that wasn't an option for us, so we conceptualized a new way of celebrating.
I think to that point, though, a lot of people that are involved in leadership roles have been sort of maybe on the peripheral for a while, and there's a lot of just history in this celebration here and what it means. I mean, we're in the birthplace, yeah, right, and how it's expanded from this area here to where it is now.
Yeah, I think that there are definitely people. We have a board member who's been with us, for 13 years. He's seen a lot of it. And then we have a lot of new energy, and I think that speaks to, it's really important to us that we honor our legacy while looking at what the direction that we need to go in. So we have the past 20 years, which has taken St. Pete Pride to where it is, and we do have this incredible legacy and history. And then we need to look forward, because the reality is our community doesn't look the way it looked 20 years ago, right? The LGBTQ community in St. Pete does not look the way that it looked in 2003 demographically. And so as an organization, we're very conscious about evolving to make sure that we are truly inclusive, and that we fulfill on our mission of representing everyone who's part of our community. And I think that that's part of what you see represented in our leadership, in the volunteers, and in our programming.
And I like too, focusing on the progress, with the pendulum swinging, just to look at how different the event itself looks from that first year, yeah, to now. I mean, just you could visually put the two pictures side by side.
I mean, it's incredible. I had the honor of meeting Brian Longstrath, who was one of the people who was instrumental to founding St. Pete Pride, and he told me that they hoped that maybe 1,000 people would show up
for the first Pride.
For the first Pride, right? And I think in 2019 we had 267,000 people, and this year we're expecting over 300,000 people. So obviously we've had to move the parade in part because St. Pete is being developed, right? The birthplace of Pride, where we are now, which always deserves to be honored, is being developed. So there isn't as much empty space for staging. It's harder to keep that many people safe in such a confined area. So it has been moved to the waterfront. So visually, if you look at aerial pictures, it's astounding what in 20 years has happened, and there's just absolutely no sign of it slowing down.
You have 3 kids, you said.
Yeah.
In 2022, what does Pride mean to you and your family?
It's a real honor to be part of. And I think my kids understand. I have to do a lot of talking to them about why I'm maybe not home for dinner some nights, or I have to go and make a phone call. But I think they get it. We try to speak very honestly to them about the fight for a family like ours to exist, and the need for us to not be complacent and to advocate for other people who maybe don't even have the rights that we have yet. Family Day last year was probably one of the best days of my life. My kids were there. I was overwhelmed by how many of their heterosexual friends' families came and brought, their kids to celebrate, all in their pride shirts. But the moment that really stuck out for me is I worked the merch tent for a little while. I tried to go and work all the different places and see. And I was in the merch tent and I kept seeing family after family come up with an LGBTQ youth, anywhere between the ages of, some as young as 11, to 20 with their parents. And the parents were saying, what flag do you want? And they're having that conversation at the merch tent about what represents them. And it was really overwhelming to get to be a part of that experience. And then you just see, I remember one kid in particular where I just saw their visual relief. It was just the minute they draped that, and it was just that to me, that's what keeps me going when I get really tired. I think this is somebody's first pride, and we're going to make sure that it is the best and happiest day of their life.
I love that. And to witness that, because I'm sure, well, I don't know, when you grew up, I know when I grew up, to have ever pictured having a moment like that with my parents at that age.
Never would have happened.
It wasn't even imaginable.
No.
If there's one thing that these past couple of years have sort of, I don't know, jolted me into a new sense of reality, is that I remember 2015 in marriage equality and covering that and sort of newly being out publicly and thinking wow, this is a whole new ball game. We have really turned a tide. And we have. But these past few years have also sort of reminded me that on the peripheral there are still a lot of people and a lot of voices that are not, that are still very resistant and adamant that this is not acceptable, that that you are not acceptable. Does that ever sort of bums me out? How do you deal with that?
When I first started monitoring the St. Pete Pride Facebook page, I definitely had about 48 hours of being really bummed out, where I would read the comments, and it kind of blew me away how unselfconsciously people were willing to put their name out there with horrifically homophobic comments, right? These weren't trolls, these were real people living right here in St. Pete, right? Shamelessly just saying horrible things, right? And I took a couple of days and I was like, oh, this is really tough. And then I just got really pissed off. And I thought, you know what? We're going to make this the gayest city in America. That's what we're going to do. We are going to put rainbows everywhere. We are going to have the best Pride celebration. And we're going to make every single kid who maybe is going to hear or read that comment see 10 comments more or feel 10 times more love to drown that out. Because the reality is progress is slow. And LGBTQ rights, it's actually really recent in the grand history, right? It's it feels we're impatient because it seems so obvious to us. But really, it's very, very new. Marriage equality is 2015. My kids were at my wedding, right? That's how recent that is. Growing up, gay was a taboo, right? It was the outliers of society. That's who was gay. And that already has changed. And of course, there are going to be people who are resistant to that because change is scary, right? Change is really scary for most people, especially if you don't understand it. And that's why I always say, okay, if you really don't understand why we need to have a gay pride celebration, if you're really curious about that, why don't you come to one and see what it's about and see if there's anything to be scared of, right? If you don't understand why you can't have a straight parade, by all means, have a straight pride, right? Every day is straight pride. But if you still don't get it, come to a celebration. So I had a moment of being upset. I realized that was a complete waste of energy and that I was going to channel that energy instead into putting more positivity into the world and giving them less power and energy.
And look at you organizing the largest pride parade in Florida. So there you go.
I think a point that I really, really want to make is that I understand that St. Pete Pride as an organization hasn't always done a great job representing everyone. Not intentionally, but simply, again, because change is hard, right? And things are changing. And the team that we have right now is so sincerely committed to inclusivity in a way that it's like really inspiring to be part of. And the reality is the first Pride was a protest. It was a riot. It was led by Black and brown trans women who have sadly often been erased from the history of Pride. And we as an organization are really committed to honoring them, to honoring the trans community. Trans youth right now need our love and support more than ever. And that's the direction that St. Pete Pride is going in. And we really hope that everyone who joins our organization is committed to helping us further that goal.
If you're going to be in, you got to be all in.
All in.
Thank you. It's good to talk to you.
You too. Thank you.